Welcome to Paranormal M, where we reveal the secrets of the supernatural. Subscribe now and stay tuned for haunting episodes that will captivate your imagination. Prepare to explore the unexplained. Black, smoked, glowing entity tried to enter my body upon waking up. Last Thursday night, that was 3/6/2025, my 6-year-old German Shepherd, who's not a cuddler, from 11 to 1 a.m. was sleeping but woke up at least 5 times growling, which is pretty odd. He ended up laying beside me and put his head on my chest for a whole 2 minutes, which he never did before. Now I'm thinking maybe protecting me. What's also a little strange is earlier in the day I had visited my family and said to my sister and mom that my dog's not a cuddler and I wish he was. Coincidence? Probably. At 1:30 a.m. and at 2 a.m., he ran barking from my bed down the other side of the house. I have to bring him back to my room, so I shut my door to not wake up my roommate again. I only slept from 2 a.m. to about 3:30, but I randomly woke up from sleeping and was still laying on my back. And in that 2 seconds of waking up, fuzziness, I saw this black glowing energy cloud like it was beside me, but behind me, was trying to enter me through my back or the back of my head. I flipped my face and body toward my pillow to look at it, and it tried kind of coming toward me, and I just screamed and yelled, "No!" It was like maybe 1.5 feet away at this point. It started in my bed and pillow. I jumped over my dog, off my bed, and ran to the door screaming, which was shut. Tried opening it, and I just couldn't get my door open. Mind you, it's unlocked. I looked back, and it was on my floor between me and the bed. Only about 1.5 feet tall, but maybe 3 or 4 feet wide. And like black smoke-like with a glow all around it. But it was way darker than my room, and I had no lights on. Eek! Anyway, the thing reached for me. I saw 2 arm-like things reach at me. I tried to open the door screaming, crawled up to my left knee, and of course I screamed louder and the door finally opens. It felt like it was trying to enter my chest. Not entirely sure if it did. I'm assuming it did, and a door swung open and I ran to my friend's room who was walking to me, and we met in between our rooms. I then explained everything really fast. Went back into my room and saw that it was 3:36 a.m. I'm concerned that it was 3:33 when it all went down. That's usually a good sign. I was and am absolutely petrified. I was full body shaking uncontrollably off and on the rest of the night and during the next day too. It was real. I was full-blown awake, and I don't think it was my spirit. I was too afraid of it. It was too dark. I never shook like I did purely fueled by fear, even 12 hours later. So, of course, I put my nightlight on immediately afterwards, and it turned off by itself, not even 5 minutes later. Scariest part is this has happened to me once before. I somehow forgot, and my mom reminded me that the same exact type of spirit or energy tried to enter me when I was waking up about 2 years ago. That was at my mom's. It was in the same exact manner, through the back of me. It tried coming back into my body with me, with my consciousness. I ran from it then too. I ran to wake my mom up in sort of a panic and describing the same exact entity. Obviously, the next day when I told her what happened, she reminded me, and I remembered. It's funny what the brain forgets. My mom told me that day that this has happened. Well, it's happened twice in her lifetime, also at her back. But both times she was too afraid to look. But what she did say was that she had never felt anything so evil. So evil she didn't even want to look at it, to acknowledge its existence. She was frozen in fear. Me, hell to the no. I screamed as loud as I could and ran both times. After some thinking, I truly believe I opened my eyes too quickly before my body awoke and saw what I wasn't supposed to. I was jolted awake out of sleep and my eyes opened too soon. I'm afraid now that maybe spirits or entities attach to our consciousness while we sleep and come back into our bodies to use as their vessels without us even realizing. I don't know. I'm concerned to say the least, though. And I've obviously seen interdimensional beings, I'm assuming. Does anybody have a better idea with what I'm dealing with here? I live in Massachusetts, and I'm 34 years old, and I'm a female. This is an honest-to-God true story. Back in 2004, maybe 2005 or something, my girlfriend and I were driving around. I decided to go to the Honda dealership in town to look at motorcycles. This was completely random and totally spur of the moment. Also, social media did not exist and there was just no way nobody knew we were going to be going there. We walk in and there's this short, older-looking black dude who looks like he's sort of a kind of argument with the salesman. The salesman is literally trying to get this dude to leave, a second or two after Maya and I walk in, the old black dude, not an Always Sunny reference, turns around, stares right at my girlfriend and I, proceeds to totally ignore the salesman as though he isn't even there. He walks right up to Maya and I. He introduces himself as Ramses. Knows my name. Knows my girlfriend's name. And remember, there was no social media back then. Knows about us, too. Then starts to tell me about my grandpa and his war history. He shakes my hand and leaves. All he wanted to do was meet me. Also, he looked older, but he had the eyes of a way younger dude. Honest to God, I promise you, I'm not making this shit up. That dude had been waiting for me to show up, and he knew I was going to be there. He knew who I was. He knew my fucking girlfriend. He knew my grandpa. He knew his war history, and my girlfriend and I were both mind-fucked. We go home, I tell my mom, she tells my sister. My sister calls me on my flip phone. I think it was a legit 8,200 or something. She's all spooked too. A lot of weird stuff in her family going way back since I was born. So when stuff like this happens, it messes with all of us. And nobody in my family will deny even a little bit of it. Even my grandpa somehow knew this guy, which I highly doubt. There's no way he would have known my girlfriend. My grandpa never met her, not once. I don't even think he had an idea that she even existed. Didn't talk to that side of the family, not even one iota. God only knows how long, really, until I started talking to my dad again. 2022 or something. Now, here's what I think. Here's the mainly feasible options, and yeah, that's where I'm at in my life. Since I know this is all real, and so I have to start finding explanations for all of it, and when stuff gets really weird, you have to start thinking outside what are considered norms. 1. An angel. This lines up with another, even crazier story with another old black dude named Eli. That story deserves its own post, really. It changed my whole life. Number 2 would be time travel. Something outside of, no one could really lead back to Angel, or maybe this one could. So anyway, what do you think? this is real. That dude was waiting for me, and he did know me. Or knew of me, at least. I post about my grandpa all the friggin' time on the internet. Like, all the time. And that shit stays on there forever, and I've got a lot of fucking stuff going on in my life, and if you even heard half of it or lived this shit, you would understand what I'm saying here when I say I think I do something special at some point. And I think people have visited me just to meet me. And I know how crazy that does sound. The other option is the God stuff, right? I mean, I believe in Jesus. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and he died for my sins and was resurrected 3 days, and that Eli story. What's going on right now really leads me to believe the religious stuff too. I don't know. What do you think? What could have caused this? I've run this through my head God only knows how many times over in the past 20 years. Wish I still talked to Maya just so I could talk to her about it again and see if maybe I've forgotten anything. It was so fucking weird, especially knowing her. Well, even me and my grandpa, but then her too. And he was waiting, 100%, he was waiting for me. There's something really crazy going on in my life right now. You're probably gonna hear about me someday, maybe soon. I don't mean that in a crazy or violent way, by the way. Good thing to clarify. And it'll probably be bad at first. But this story is crazy. Double this. And I think it's going to be massive. Good thing you clarified the crazy or violent thing before, because it's turning back the other way by your description. Anyway. And I'm not making anything up. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I just felt really compelled to tell that story tonight. Spirits or entities? Looking for clarification. From October 13th, my family rented a house. It was nice sized and it was in the suburbs and it was built in the mid-50s, I believe. When we moved in, it was already furnished. I was in my first bedroom and I changed rooms 3 times. There was a desk in it and I was doing homework and I was probably 10 or 11 at this time. I see out of the corner of my eye a man in black, walking slightly behind me. I didn't see him fully, I saw from his shoulder to about his wrist. But he appeared to walk out of my peripheral and when I turned around, there was nothing. Just myself staring back at me in the mirror. I could feel something was wrong. I tried to go back to my homework, but I felt very uneasy. Like something was in my room that grabbed my stuff and ran downstairs. The next time I saw something, I was sitting at a table. That's went out of my peripheral again. I saw something, and this time a woman in a dark pink and purple fleece. I know it was a woman because this time I saw half of her torso. Chest and shoulder and arm, but again, I turned, no one was there. And I should mention there are a lot of mirrors in that house, none of which my family put there. I later saw some spiritual people say that you should never have a second-hand mirror. That's because you don't know what they've seen. So maybe there was bad stuff from that. The next time something strange happened, I switched rooms. I switched with my mom because in my room I wasn't sleeping well. Started to sleepwalk, my neck and back started hurting from sleeping in that bed, and, well, I also became very ill. I had the stomach flu for about a week, but it got so bad I had to be hospitalized and kept overnight for rehydration and medication. I think it was through an IV. But once I was in the hospital and I had the IV, I stopped throwing up and recovered in pretty much a day. Now, when I switched rooms with my mom, it was night. Everyone was asleep. But I had my door open, unlike everyone else. I woke up to a light illuminating the hallway. But at first, I wasn't scared. I felt at peace almost. Then I was getting brighter and moving to my room. Once I saw the full thing, I felt my stomach drop. My blood ran cold. It was a big orb of shining light and it was moving on its own. I don't even know why I was so scared. But it was moving toward my room. It was sentient, and I know it because it stopped at my doorframe because I was awake. I was staring at it, and I know it was staring back at me. It was just floating there. But I had a fond response from the first time, and fond, maybe? Or perhaps a deer-like response from the first time to now. And this all happened in a year, so I was like 11 or maybe just turned 12. I really felt in that moment like my life was in danger. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. I pulled the blanket over my head and was just waiting for something to happen. I eventually fell back asleep, and when I woke up it was gone and everything seemed normal. The next time something happened, my family and I were watching the Eliza Lamb documentary. Hope I spelled her name right. I hope I said it right. It was a documentary on Netflix. We hadn't finished it when my grandmother and I made a makeshift Ouija board from cardboard, paper, and a shot glass as a planchette. We actually summoned a spirit, and I believe this because we asked it a question if a goth guy from the doc killed Eliza. And it said no the next day. We watched the documentary from where we left off, and it says the guy was cleared of suspicion. But my grandmother made a mistake when we were done talking to the ghost. I told her that we need to say goodbye. She shook her fingers off the glass and said goodbye without forcibly moving the glass to goodbye. I told her no, and now we have to hurry to fix it. So we tried to say goodbye the right way, and I thought everything was good. The next day, I wake up and the fridge is leaking water. Call the landlord, and he sends a repairman. They have no idea what's wrong, why the fridge is leaking and how it's leaking, and where the leak is originating from. Nothing. Me too. Anyway, the leaking eventually stops, but then the walking in the attic starts. I would hear footsteps and rustling in the attic many times throughout the day. I was so sure there was someone in there, I had my aunt go up and look, and, well, you guessed it, no one was there. I would also hear footsteps walking around upstairs even when I was there home alone. Then the landlord wanted to move back in, so we had to leave, and the footsteps, things breaking, seeing entities, and partial people. Extreme illness, everything all stopped in the house I'm in now. Also, forgot to mention earlier that I had to move out of my mom's old room after we switched. That's because the house would become infested with stink bugs. Winter and summer. There was always stink bugs. Then I eventually found out that they were congregating in my room. I pulled back the curtain, and on the back the entire thing was filled with stink bugs. I never had an infestation like that, and I eventually moved bedrooms again. Sounds better than my centipede infestation. If you hear slight pauses, it's because something's tickling my feet, and it's got too many legs. Ugh. Had this intense dark dream where I was being chased. I had to rescue this little girl. Meaning, okay, so I just woke up from this dark and creepy dream. I have to talk about it because it's freaking me out. The dream started in a very gloomy and dark atmosphere, like a dark autumn night. There was this girl, maybe 8 to 12 years old, riding her bicycle. She was doing this while talking to her friend on the phone. She was lost, but was supposed to go to her friend's place, which was in some kindergarten or next to a kindergarten. I stepped in to guide her. We were on top of this hill that had stairs leading down. Below the hill were buildings. She's about to go down when something clicked in my mind. This place felt familiar. and I was sure there was no kindergarten down there. And I didn't see a kindergarten. So I told her, "It's not there, it's on the other side." Then suddenly, on the other side of the stairs, I noticed a man lurking in the shadows. He looked weird, giving off a seriously creepy, predatory sort of feeling. I immediately knew that he was up to no good. I told the girl to hurry up, that we need to go. She locked her bike, of course, but as she was unlocking it, I could see the man coming toward us. I told her to hurry up since there's a man coming. And that's when she started panicking. I got this feeling that this little girl has never sensed or seen any danger in her life. She didn't even see the man coming toward us, but started panicking when I told her this. Right as she got onto her bike, she began fainting. I was now on full alert. My mission was to get her out of there, bring her to her friend safely. The man kept following us. I was completely terrified. Tried to wake the girl up while praying to God and the angels to give her strength. I was holding her on the bike and I kept helping her so we could escape. Somehow I managed to get her to her destination. I locked the gate behind us, thinking we were finally safe. But then, because dreams love to mess with logic, the man just casually went around the gate on the right side since it didn't fully enclose the area. Here's the weirdest part. He didn't attack or harm us. Instead, he just smiled at me and handed me this black and gold wand or cane. And then, poof, the dream ended. What the fuck does this all mean? It was so intense and felt like it carried some deep meaning. The atmosphere was so eerie, yet at the end, the man almost seemed like he had a purpose. Was he really a threat or was he testing me? What's up with the black and gold cane? Has anybody else had a dream like this? Any interpretations? I need to hear thoughts because this one is haunting me. This was weirdly a very vivid and alive dream too. It felt too real, like I could control myself in a dream. Never had a dream like this. They're pretty common. My weirdest paranormal encounter. Thought I was going crazy. So what I, a 25-year-old male, experienced a year ago was frankly crazy to believe, even for me. So you're gonna have to trust me on this one, and I sadly have nothing to back up my story. Except maybe my ex-girlfriend's testimony, but since we haven't ever talked about it later, nor have talked since she left me. And I went as far as swinging a psychiatrist to confirm I did not go mad. Swinging a psychiatrist? I was at a low point in life about a year or so ago, and what began as me just visiting a girl I met at my job became one of the scariest events in all of my life. Tell me about it. Picture this. I was working as a waiter at the time, and I just broke up with some girl I knew was not going to be the one. Some girl walks in, and it's approximately Christmas time in the mountains in the south of France. I gather up all my strength, and I hit on the girl for most of her dinner with a friend. It goes well, as I'm not too pushy, and the connection was evident as she walked in, so I end up with her number. And at the end of the shift, I sent a message, not expecting to get a quick response. But she replies almost instantly with something along the lines of, "It's been hot. I wish I could see you tonight, but I'm already home and it's more than an hour away." I usually wouldn't have gone all the way to meet up or would have at least have waited a weekend day or something, but I went anyway. I arrived sometime around 3:30 a.m. as I left work at 2 a.m. It didn't take long for us to get to business. Pretty passionate night, had to do it multiple times and could still go at it, to be honest. But things began to be weird right before I had to leave to go back to work at around 6:30 or 7 a.m. It started with some lights flickering and a loud thump downstairs. So, not a lot to be scared of, but the timing was weirdly responding to what we were saying. Note, she lived alone at this time. At the second thump, it was no coincidence anymore, and she says she's never heard that in her home. So, I try to investigate what the sound could be because she's genuinely feeling pretty scared. It's not a big house, though, so I quickly go to the kitchen where the sound seemed to be coming from, and right behind me in the living room. Same exact thumping sound, but way closer. I turn around and I see some shadow-like form where the sound is from. My phone's light pointing directly, but the thing stayed pitch black. After a few seconds, it seemed to dissipate in front of me. So I freeze, I don't understand what's going on, but I have to go back upstairs. Still half naked, and someone I barely know is upstairs, not knowing what's going on. So my legs are trembling, I go back upstairs, and I immediately put on some clothes. I tell her that she should leave her house too, because X. Because X. You're just gonna leave me hanging like that. I'm not entirely surprised. Kind of shadow people encounter. 7 years ago, my school friend and I came up with the idea to try bushcraft. One day we packed a few things, and my friend definitely brought a small hatchet and a makeshift stove made from a tin can. We wandered through the forest for a bit, and it was mostly a deep coniferous forest, but had a strange feeling about the place. We eventually found a nice spot surrounded by young pine trees, which formed a natural barrier around us. It wasn't too late in the day, the sun was nearing the horizon, but it was still fairly bright. We unpacked our stuff, and that's when I realized this strange feeling came from the dead silence around us. No birds, not even the rustling of leaves in the wind. As we settled in, my friend started setting up the stove. That's when I began cutting down one of the small trees to build a frame for a shelter. That's when I started feeling chills and an odd coldness. After some time, when I was sweaty and done with cutting, I sat down on the ground among the small pines and froze. No more than 20 meters away, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something dark and unclear moving along the gravel path. I could just make out 4 limbs moving in a strange way, more like human limbs. The upper part of the figure was obscured by the trees. Right at the moment when it was about to step into a clearing, where I could see it fully, it seemed to dissolve into thin air. I even leaned over to check. There was nothing there. The area beyond our little grove was a flat clearing, and the thing's pace wasn't fast enough for it to have been disappearing into the next tree line. I was about 200 meters away. What was even stranger was that I hadn't heard any sound as it walked. No crunching of gravel or twigs, even though it looked quite heavy, just judging by its legs. Called my friend's name in a whisper, and without saying anything, we packed up our stuff in about 20 seconds and left. Not a bad idea. As we walked away, the forest sound slowly returned. Birds started singing. Trees creaked in the wind, and the chill and goosebumps faded. I asked my friend if he felt the same. He said, yeah. We agreed to tell ourselves it was just a moose, but it felt more like we were convincing ourselves than stating the actual truth. The same thing I tell myself when something touches my feet. It's just a moose. Unusual childhood awareness. A fascinating experience I can't explain. Story when I was only 2 years old. I experienced something I can only describe as an incredible moment of complete awareness. I was with my family by a lake, and I clearly remembered crouching down to pick up a stone from the ground. My feet were in the water and I was wearing sandals. At that moment, I saw a man in blue swimming trunks jumping into the water. Then I heard my parents calling my name. I stood up and turned toward them. I saw them getting ready to take a photo of me, and behind them I noticed another family. A girl around 8 years old, her father with brown hair, her mother wearing sunglasses, and a boy about 15 years old. I turned to face the camera, and just as the camera shutter clicked, this adult-like consciousness of mine, what I would describe as my present-day awareness, suddenly disappeared. What makes this experience even more fascinating is that in those moments I heard a voice in my head, my own voice, speaking to me in Bosnian, saying, "Turn around and don't make a fool of yourself." I grew up in Germany, where my parents spoke to me only in German, yet this internal voice was in Bosnian, as if I were addressing myself in a language I fully understood. This happened to me a total of 3 times, once at age 2 and twice at age 3. Each time I was vividly aware of this inner voice and the scenes around me. But after a few moments, this heightened state of awareness would abruptly vanish, and I'd return to my normal childlike state. One of these moments occurred when I was crying after being scolded by a parent, and again, I heard my voice sternly say, "Stop crying, calm down." After that, the awareness disappeared again. The first experience at that lake stands out the most because I have a photograph taken at that exact moment it happened. Every time I look at that photo, I vividly recall this experience as if it happened yesterday. Question: can anyone help me understand what happened? Is this connected to any known phenomena related to awareness, early childhood memory, or even something deeper and more complex that we don't yet fully understand? Has anyone else experienced something similar? I'd greatly appreciate any insights or stories that could help me make sense of this. Funny enough, I have had dreams in German. And I'm not German. Well, I'm not from Germany. I haven't slept in my room in over a year. I'm gonna start off with, I'm sorry if I don't have the right tag. This is my first post here. But I live in an old farmhouse that was built in 1860. I moved in many years ago. I was only about 12 years old when we moved in. But when my mom told me I was sleeping upstairs, I immediately got an unsettling feeling, without even knowing anything about the house. So I got all my stuff up here and I slept up here. After about 2 years, I started feeling very uncomfortable in my own room, feeling like I wasn't welcome at exactly 11 o'clock every night. I've even had friends come over after that. Haven't said anything about this to and around 11 o'clock without failure. Every single one of them has said that they want to leave my room. This started about 2 years ago. I originally had just put it out of my mind and tried to ignore it. But after about 6 months of that, I went to sleep and woke up to an old woman standing over my head, and I blinked. I waved my hands in front of me and she was just standing over my face staring. I watched her fade out of existence over a few minutes with a terrible smile. I didn't go into my room for weeks after that. And then, about 3 weeks later, the weird energy was just gone. So I was fine sleeping up here for about a year and a half, and then the weird feeling at 11 o'clock started every night all over again. So I started burning sage as soon as I would feel weird, and this has always helped. Then going downstairs to sleep on the couch. Flashback to about a week ago. I got the weird feeling, I started burning sage, and immediately my sage wouldn't burn. Then it went up in a huge flame and blew out in the opposite direction of my breath. I watched the flame go to the side, So I went downstairs, and the entire night I saw something peeking around the corner by my stairwell. The fact that I was seeing things downstairs really worries me because I've always gone down there to get away from the bad energy. Well, this has now been going on since then, and any time I just look out my peripheral vision, I see an all-black figure of a person staring at me. I guess I'm just trying to get some advice on that, like what to do, because I feel like things are escalating and I don't know how to go about fixing it. At least before they go too far, and for anybody that's wondering, why I don't sleep upstairs. It's because whenever I feel that feeling, I'm terrified that I'm going to wake up to that old woman standing over my face again. So I just sleep on the couch, just to make sure I don't have to go through that again. That experience was truly traumatizing, and I would do anything to stay away from whatever it was. Spotted shadow animals, blobs outside. Like the title says, I've had 2 experiences of spotting black shadow animals or blobs in my backyard. I'm putting this under apparition since they weren't people, but I can change the flair if that would be a better fit. The first was very distinctly cat-shaped. That's what I thought it was at first, since the occasional stray or outdoor cat visiting isn't super unusual. And at that time, we had an orange and white cat nearby recently. It was under a row of conifer-type trees, so it was shaded, across the yard from where I was. I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm nearsighted, so I was watching it because, well, cat. Totally understand. Then it walks behind a tree trunk, disappears when it should have popped out the other side. Think of the cat from Coraline. These weren't super skinny trunks, but they weren't so fat an entire cat could hide behind them at that angle it walked behind the tree at. The second one was more indistinct, and that makes me say blob as well as animal. When I saw it, however, my first thought was bunny. It was about bunny-sized and seemed to sort of leap under the shed. I turned the corner a second later, and there's nothing there. The strange thing is that I had an older puppy there in a leash with me. He was really little and still learning where he was and where he isn't allowed to be. He has a very high prey drive and a good nose. And if you have a treat, he knows which hand it's in 9 times out of 10. But he had no reaction whatever this was, which, if it was an animal, surely he would have noticed if it, did with my weaker human senses. I actually posted about this in my Tumblr a while back, and somebody had commented that they had an experience with what they call a shadow toad. Apparently, it crossed their path while they were walking in the forest with their dog. Shadow toad. Potential explanations I've thought of, but I'm a bit skeptical of, and why. If anybody has any other explanations or similar experiences, I'm open to hearing them. I'd class myself as a skeptical believer in the paranormal. Dash. Melanistic animals. Never heard that word. Relating to melanin? Melanistic. Black or melanistic animals. No one else saw a black cat or a rabbit near a property. All the animals that visit us are squirrels, rabbits, with a rare fox, or maybe a groundhog. Occasionally an opossum. None of them are completely black, and if they were, surely they'd have been spotted again at some point, considering we have 2 puppies that go out fairly frequently. That, and like I said in the story, our energetic high prey drive puppy had no reaction to this. The cat was just a cat that just happened to sit or climb up the tree at a perfect angle, and it looked like it vanished. And this cat was going in a straight line from my perspective from one side of the tree to the other. If it was at an angle, I'd be more on the fence or inclined to believe it was just a cat. I know a lot of blob cats. Is it a blob? Is it a cat? It's a blob cat. An encounter I had in Iceland. Hello, I had a bit of a late night watching horror movies, and that caused me to remember a fun encounter I had a couple of years back. Kick-started my interest in the paranormal, you could say. See, I always have been extremely skeptical about every scary video, every scary story, and about spirits in general. But this one encounter changed all of that for me. I was around 16 at a friend's house. It was a rather old home that stood in the city of Selfos for a very long time, but it never gave off those ooh haunted vibes. Anyway, there were about 8 of us at this friend's house having a normal get-together. No alcohol, so can't blame it on being drunk. That's when I decided I needed time alone to answer a couple of text messages inside the living room. The living room stood right next to the dining room, so all my friends were in plain view. It started with me feeling a light breeze on my neck and a chill. Then a minute went by, and clear as day I heard a raspy old woman whisper into my ear. They were saying hello in Icelandic. I was, of course, jump-scared as I was deep into my texting and looked around seeing no one in the same room as me. So a minute goes by. My friend walks through the door, and mind you, that door is on the same side as the ear I got whispered in. So, as any rational person, I asked him if that was him whispering through the door. He denied it, and I brushed it off and walked into the dining room, joining the others with my back toward that living room. I told the group that I was going crazy and that I heard an old woman whisper. The owner of the house laughed and said, "No, you're not crazy. That's normal here. 4 people died in this house. An old woman and 3 men that had died of suicide." And as she finished saying that, my hoodie got tugged on, and multiple people had seen it get tugged on. And when I tell you I freaked out, man, I was like trying to shake a spider off me, ripping at my clothes and goosebumps all over my arms. Everyone was laughing at me like I was some dork. But after I was done ripping at my clothes like a lunatic, we heard heavy-set footsteps sprinting up the stairs. Sounded like heavy work boots, and after we heard the footsteps reach the top and run upstairs, a door slammed and the footsteps ended. Everyone in that house was in that dining room, and we all sprinted upstairs to search if anybody had somehow ran into the house and up the stairs. As you might imagine, no one was upstairs, and we searched every single room. Man, this entire encounter has 8 witnesses, so I can't find any rational explanation for any of this. The door couldn't have slammed because of the wind, as it was the middle of summer with barely any wind outside. Now, I do have another story from the owner that I find kind of wholesome, yet extremely creepy. She had reportedly once been awake near 1 to 2 a.m. on her phone alone at home. That's when her door swung open with footsteps approaching her bed. Then she heard that same old woman whisper and tell her to go to sleep. Then her door closed and her light shut off. I get a sort of protective feeling from that interaction, at least, and like she told me nothing ever violence happened and she learned to live with these spirits. I really wish now, with my interest in the paranormal, that I could go back and, properly investigate and see if I could communicate further, seeing as the spirit had greeted me. Something in my apartment. Want to tell you about this apartment I used to live in. Maybe somebody can tell me what we were dealing with. Back in the year 2000, when we first got married, my husband and I lived in an apartment in Summerville, South Carolina. At first, nothing was strange about it, but soon after we moved in, we adopted a cat. And soon after that, we adopted another one. We had the second bedroom set up as sort of a cat room, where we put the litter box, the food and water dishes, the cat tower, and other toys. They were pretty rambunctious, as cats are, so at night we would just sort of put them in their room while we slept. That way we wouldn't wake up the apartment being destroyed, and At night, we would hear this metallic tapping sound. It would always be coming from their room. The wall behind our headboard was shared with that room, so just on the other side of the wall. It would happen almost every night. It would go on until we fell asleep. And it only happened at night, never during the day. We couldn't figure it out, so we joked that we were building a spaceship and planning their escape. We also chalked up random missing items to their imagined spaceship. After a while, we started letting the cats roam the apartment at night, although all their stuff stayed in that extra bedroom. One night, as we were trying to get to sleep, we heard a crash in the kitchen. We were in the habit of leaving the dishes on a towel in the corner to dry overnight, so we knew that one of the cats had knocked them off. That was the sound. Crashing dishes. It was late and it didn't sound like anything actually broke, so we just groaned and said we'd deal with it in the morning. The next morning, however, we got up and there was nothing in the kitchen or anywhere else in the apartment. We had apparently put the dishes away the night before. No idea what that crashing sound was. The creepiest thing happened one night when we were watching TV in the living room. The cats were playing and chasing each other and hiding and jumping out at each other. We were on the couch and there was a love seat about 3 feet away from the wall. The cats stopped, one on each end of the love seat, both staring at a spot just underneath the window. At first, we assumed that they were about to pounce on each other. But after a while, we started paying attention. We realized that they were both completely stiff, which isn't particularly unusual for that kind of play, and they couldn't even see each other, nor were they trying to. So we got up and my husband went to one side and nudged the cat with his foot. She didn't budge. A little creeped out, I went to the other side and picked up the other cat, thinking that this would break his concentration, but it didn't. He stayed completely stiff in my arms, not taking his eyes off that spot. Even his tail was like a stiff rod. My husband kicked his foot through the air in the spot that they were staring at, and suddenly they both just relaxed. The one in my arms just went almost limp and jumped to the ground and just wandered off like nothing had even happened. Same with the other one. Another thing that had nothing to do with the cats, and we didn't even talk about it until years later. We were both freaked out in the bedroom. Sometimes, when I was trying to get to sleep, I would just close my eyes and see a dark figure standing near the foot of my bed. It was against the opposite wall and slightly off to one side, but it was always in the same spot. It wasn't tall, maybe 4 feet, and was solid, not shadowy. When I opened my eyes, it wasn't there, but when I would close them, it was back again. Other times, I would come home from work in the morning. I worked nights and he worked days. I'd go into the bedroom to change and not able to stay in there. And this was daytime, not pre-dawn hours. Sometimes it was fine and I would change and go to bed, but other times I just felt really uncomfortable and not really wanted to stay. I just told myself I wasn't tired yet and went to watch TV in the living room and slept on the couch until the afternoon. Of course, I didn't say anything to my husband about it because I was a grown woman, apparently too afraid of being alone to sleep in my bed. I felt ridiculous and just passed it off as I fell asleep watching TV. And when I came home, sometimes to find my husband asleep on the couch, I just assumed he had legitimately fallen asleep watching TV. Years later, after we moved a few times, we were watching some ghost show or another. There's a story about a Native American legend in the area which described this thing I remember seeing in my mind. I don't remember anything else, really, about what they were saying, because both my husband and I were leaning forward, pointing at the TV, saying, "I saw that!" We never mentioned it to each other, but we both saw the same thing on those nights, and both of us could only see it with our eyes closed. He also told me that when I found him sleeping on the couch, it wasn't because he fell asleep. It was because, like me, at certain times he felt like there was something in the bedroom with him, and he just couldn't stay. One last point. The hall leading from the living room to the back where the bedroom and bathroom were, it had a turn which blocked any light from the front rooms, so it was dark black there. When we watched TV at night, any time one of us would go to the bathroom, our male cat would scurry out of wherever he was hiding and go with us. While we were in there, we could hear him scratching around in the litter box, so we knew what he was doing. He would usually be waiting at the bathroom door when we came out to walk back with us. On the occasion that we were out before him, he would stand in the bedroom doorway and meow until one of us came back to escort him back, and after we moved, he was never like that again. So, does anyone know what this entity could have been? I've searched online, but I can't find any reference to anything like that in the area. According to the show we were watching, it's an evil entity and it's known to local native people. Unfortunately, I don't remember most of the show because we got sidetracked comparing notes about our experiences. I saw something as a kid and I still can't explain it. I can't quite remember when this happened to me, but I was really young. Maybe around 7 or 8 years old. I don't think about it often, but every few years the memory comes back. And to this day, I have no explanation for what I saw. I was at home, and my mom told me to go outside to grab something. Our house was still under construction at the time, but it was already big. It had an outside kitchen connected to the main house by a small open corridor. When I opened the door to go there, I saw something. It was moving from the left side of the corridor, walking toward the outdoor bathroom. At first glance, it looked like some kind of stray animal. But something was off. It was too tall to be a dog, but too small to be a horse. It had the thin, malnourished body of a street dog with caramel-colored fur or skin. But when I focused on it, what I was seeing, it wasn't some weird-looking dog who probably had entered the house. The head was my grandpa's, exactly like my grandfather's head, bald with wrinkles and even his glasses. But there was something weird with his eyes. They were white or gray, maybe even red. Can't remember exactly. But I know they weren't normal eyes. I don't remember hearing any sounds. I don't remember if it made a noise or if it reacted to me. But as it walked forward, it turned its neck as if it heard me. That's when I bolted inside the house. Ran to tell my mom, but I can't really remember if she believed me or just told me to pray. She is very religious, so I doubt she would have entertained the idea of anything supernatural. Never saw it again. It didn't haunt me or follow me or even appear in my dreams. But that memory is burned into my brain. I didn't feel like a dream, and even child's imagination, it felt real. And the creepiest part is my grandpa is still alive to this day, although he's sick now. Probably not anymore, and fortunately I can't really contact him to see if he's okay. I live in the southern part of Africa, and after looking into it, I think it might have been something similar to a doopie, or another spirit from African folklore. I don't know for sure. Silhouette on early morning walk. I was walking my dog early in the morning. It was just recently. This is nothing unusual. I'm an early riser, and the sooner I can get out, the better. It was a typical cold, pre-dusk wintry walk in the northeastern U.S. We head out before daybreak as I try afterwards to get showered and dressed and at my desk before 7:30 every day. So no later than 5:30 when this occurs. It's not uncommon to maybe see a few others out getting their daily exercise, and that's precisely what I thought I saw when I came to an intersecting sort of sidewalk. You could either continue straight or turn onto another road. I looked up a slight incline, and under a dimly lit canopy of scattered streetlights, I saw a glimpse of a silhouette of a woman walking towards us. I'm assuming it was a woman because of her shape and wavy hairstyle. My dog looked at her too and simply continued walking, putting her head down and sniffing away while I checked the sidewalk for any lingering ice patches or uneven breaks. Thinking that I was getting close and preparing to bring my dog in closer so we wouldn't bother the other pedestrian, I looked up again. This time the figure was much smaller, up the street considerably further, walking in the opposite direction. Even though its legs were in motion, it didn't appear to be making any ground. I swear it was like a person in the background of a video game that's going through the walking motions but never leaving the screen. So I stopped to try and figure out what the hell was going on. My dog stopped too and just sort of stared at it the same way. Yanking her in a different direction, we started heading home. But not before looking again and not being able to see it anywhere. Clearly, one could easily say that whoever it was simply turned around while I was looking down and started walking in the direction from which they had come. However, the speed at which this would have had to occur just wasn't possible. They assuredly weren't running. Anyone ever experienced any weirdness like this before? We walked that early, pretty much nearly every day, often following a similar route, but I'd never seen anything like it before or since. I also want to point out that neither of us were scared, as the hair on the back of our necks was standing up. Nope. We were simply saying to each other, if dogs could talk anyway, what the hell is going on? Glitchy, Loveland Frogman. This happened quite a few years ago. Not to myself, but to my brother. As in the case, the details may be a bit foggy, or dare I say froggy. So my brother is quite the skeptic. He's always the first person to challenge your claim or story, what have you. Always asking for scientific evidence to back up whatever it is that you're saying. He's got a hard head, and with that said, that's what makes me believe that what he told me, as he's not one to make up false claims. At the time, he was working a job in the early morning. He had to clock in by 6 a.m. We were living in a place down the road from a creek that runs through the land. There's a traffic light right by the creek where he would turn left to go to work. On the opposite side of the road is a large farmer's field that goes into brush and down to a creek. As he approached the light, he saw like a figure was walking on the side of the road heading toward the creek. He described it as being the height of a short human, but the shape was more of a frog. There wasn't that dividing area of shoulders, neck, then head. It all sort of ran together. He also said it walked strangely, unlike a normal human would. He saw it on the other side of the road as he approached the red light. He was dumbfounded and just watched it as it walked. He said the light turned green, but it didn't immediately go as he was awe-stricken with what he was seeing. He just sat and watched it for a few seconds and eventually just turned and went on his way to work. He came home that day and told me about it. I thought it sounded strange, but given his skeptical tendencies, I didn't discount what he was saying. So, we began searching online for it, and lo and behold, we found tales and other accounts of people seeing the same kind of creature in the state that we live in. A humanoid, frog-like creature that roams around creeks and rivers. We even found Native American stories telling of the same creature. If anyone else would have told me, I would have been like, oh wow, that's crazy. And then, just brush it off. Knowing my brother, though, I absolutely believe it, and I was flabbergasted. We also had no prior knowledge of the creature, so when we went searching online for it and found similar stories, that made me believe it even more. So if you're ever around a river or a creek, look out for the Frogman. and then I will make friends with the Frogman. My friend heard a strange shrieking howl. What is it? Gary, Indiana. My friend lives on the outskirts of the south side of Gary, Indiana. It's a lower middle-class area. His backyard ends in a decent-sized forest. He has seen strange lights and heard strange noises for quite some time, but it's gotten worse recently. He was having a bonfire by himself in his backyard. It was 10 feet from the tree line. He heard slow footsteps walking past, just on the other side of the trees. They walk a bit, stop for a minute, then continue. This goes on for a bit until they run straight for him. He then takes off and runs inside. It's happened on 3 separate occasions, and now he won't have bonfires by himself. More recently, he and another friend were walking through a forest path 5 minutes from his house. It's a decided trail, nothing but wetlands and trees in every direction. They both heard a strange shrieking howl from far away. Then it came again right next to them. Then it was far away again, then right next to them again, even louder. Continued for a few minutes, getting moved around until both howls were right around them. That was enough, and they both took off running. He looked me in the eye and told me it was the only time he'd ever peed his pants, and he now sleeps with a semi-auto 22 next to his bed. Hope they're spirit-piercing bullets. Or silver. I keep seeing a shadow figure around 1 a.m. It was waking me up from my sleep. Let me preface this by saying I've seen figures my whole life. I moved into my current apartment back in August, and it's been perfectly fine. About a month or 2 ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and I see a shadow figure standing by my sink. I was afraid, but when I went back to sleep, it happened again. I got up, turned my light on, and nothing was there. Another night, I heard this weird drilling sound in my bathroom. I went in there, I turned on the light, and it stopped. I had 2 vodka crans one night. Oh, cranberry? That was before bed, so I was kind of drunk, and it didn't happen. It doesn't happen every night. Another night, I woke up to all my cabinets being opened. I have a cat, and he's never been weird at night and always seems calm when these figures are here. He's also the reason I can't close my door to stop seeing things out into the kitchen. My sister and I planned a trip for her to come stay with me at the beginning of this year. She's here now, but she's been here since Saturday. She does not have the same thing as me and my mom where we see ghosts or something, but she always had these weird premonition dreams. About a week ago, she had this thing where she woke up and screamed, then went back to bed. Sunday night, I saw the figure. I got up and she screamed. Last night, I saw something very strange. What I would describe as having the face of a harpy, but the body of like a DNA strand about a foot long. It was hovering over my sister and almost pecking at her. We both woke up at approximately the same time and said, "I swear to God I'm seeing it right now." And she said, "It's okay, come here and think about a big ball of light around you." She ended up asking me if I had been awake or asleep and told her I just woke up, and she said me too. I want to know what's happening. I feel like there's some sort of a warning going on here. I don't feel like it's evil or harmful, but I feel afraid. I don't have a mental illness that I know of or disorders that could be possibly attributed to this. And I'm stressed out about school, but not any more than last semester. Please, let me know if anybody has any ideas on what to do to stop this from happening, or a way to find out what it means. mimic/doppelganger in my house. I've been seeing what looks like my boyfriend just walking around our house. It started in August of 2024. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I looked up and I saw the reflection of the microwave. My boyfriend walking by, and I saw the back of his head down to about his mid-back. It was so real that I took my headphones off and walked after him, only to find that he was still asleep. He works thirds, so he was for sure in bed at this time. He was wearing a gray tank top and he walked by too. This is something my boyfriend regularly wears, by the way. He gets home from work, he showers, and puts on either a gray or maybe a black tank top with shorts, and this is important for the rest of the story. Gecko is staring at me. People from the internet send their regards to you. I forgot to mention it. Maybe that's why he's being rude. Fast forward to last weekend, March 15th, 2025. I was on my computer in our office when I saw him walk by the door. He was again wearing the tank top, and this time I noticed shorts. And what's odd is that I instinctively knew that it wasn't him. I wasn't fearful of it, but I knew not to follow. So I did what anyone would do, and I loudly said, "Nope," went back to what I was doing. I did hear noises in the living room and kitchen, but I assumed it was my dogs until I noticed they were all in the office with me. Not sure what that was, and I don't want to think about it either. It is important to note that my boyfriend was definitely sleeping, and he did not wear a gray tank top to bed. Later in the night when my boyfriend woke up, I told him all about it, and that I felt like I was going crazy, to which he agreed, of course. He is not a believer in anything paranormal, and he was trying to make me feel better with rational explanations. He joked how the ghost needed to get a new outfit and start paying rent. Fast forward to today, March 22nd. Because my boyfriend works thirds and I'm alone at night, I shut this place down like Fort Knox. Every door is locked, including the bedroom door, and sometimes I even put the dresser in front of the door because I watched way too much true crime. Anyway, because of this, I always make sure to be awake before he gets home so I can unlock and unblock the bedroom door. I should note that if the door is closed, he usually calls me to open it so he doesn't scare me. However, this morning I slept in. At 8:03, one of my dogs started to growl, so I assumed that my boyfriend was home. I got out of bed and unlocked the door and opened it, then crawled back into bed and get some early morning snuggles with my puppers. From our bed, you can look out into the living room. You cannot see the entrance to the kitchen, but you can see when somebody walks from the kitchen to the living room, if that makes sense. Anyway, I saw my boyfriend check to see if the door was open, then quickly turned to go back into the kitchen, and this is where it gets crazy. My dog also saw this, so my little one jumped off the bed to greet him. My other dog, the one who originally growled, well, she reacted, but didn't move from the bed, which isn't totally out of character, but I found it a little bit odd. I again felt like something was off. But since it was wearing what my boyfriend was wearing when he left for work, I got up and walked to the kitchen, and I noticed his lunch wasn't on the counter. That's where he would normally put it, and I knew that when I checked to see if his car was in the driveway that it wasn't going to be there, and of course it wasn't, and to be honest, I really wasn't scared. I was actually kind of irritated, which is, well, an odd response for me because I'm normally very open to the paranormal. But I think because I know my boyfriend doesn't believe me and the only other beings that have seen it are my dogs, I just feel alone in this. I ended up going back into the bedroom and I loudly announced, "I saw you and I know you're here, and I see that you're listening to us because you changed your clothes." Then I called my boyfriend to confirm that he didn't come home and then leave, which, well, he didn't. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I do want to note that we have a carbon monoxide detector, and it's a wall-plug one, so it's constantly powered, and I just checked to make sure it's still working, and it is. I have thought about getting another one and placing it into another room just to be sure, since not only I, but my dogs are also affected by this. I should also note that I've never seen its face, only the back of its head. I've also never had any auditory hallucinations, if that accounts for anything. Strange happenings at a bed and breakfast in Antietam battlefield. From 3/18/320, I stayed in a rustic bed and breakfast near Sharpsburg, Maryland. It's overlooking the I don't know how to say this word. Antietam? Antietam? Antietam. One of those, hopefully. Battlefield. Obviously, I was aware of the area's haunting reputation. I very much believe that the area is extremely haunted, especially after my time there. But I didn't expect just how soon things would begin happening. For context, I was staying there with a friend, in rooms adjacent to each other. Each room had a private screened-in porch that had somewhat of a unique view. Each room had a different angle of the battlefield. Anyway, I was sitting on my porch at around 9 p.m. The sun doesn't set as soon as it does on the flat land due to the elevation, so it was still slightly light out. I was able to watch the sun set, and as it was setting, began to be overwhelmed with feelings of dread. Eventually, it went away, and I was able to calm down. At around 9:30, I began seeing a very faint light in the field. It was dancing and undulating, but not bright enough to be a car's headlight. Mind you, I'm overlooking the site of one of the bloodiest days in American history with quite a bit of residual energy. I would soon figure out that the light was the least of my worries. I called my friend over to take a look. We decided to go onto his porch to take that look and see if we could see this light from maybe a better angle. After looking at the light for a few minutes from his porch, I suddenly looked slightly to the left. I see a black shadow figure manifest from the ground, dart in front of a tree, and retreat back into the darkness. It was already dark outside, but there were outdoor lights, and I could see the very dark black figure even against the background of the night. Upon seeing it, my body was overwhelmed with goosebumps. I was so freaked out that I went back inside. I consider myself a relatively reasonable skeptic. I keep an open mind, but I will always try to debunk something. I had no reasonable explanation for what I saw, and I did not sleep that night as the feeling of a presence in my room filled me with some serious trepidation. I jumped at every knock, I jumped at every creak, and I'm a full-grown adult. I've never been so genuinely scared in my life, to be honest. The next morning after breakfast, I discreetly asked the innkeeper if she perhaps had any things like that happen to other guests. She did attest that people had spotted similar figures at the edge of the property, just before the field meets the woods. I'm still reeling from that experience. The rest of the second day was peaceful. I had a private ghost tour of Shepherdstown, which further strengthened my belief that the area was haunted by some heavy, dark, angry, and maybe sort of melancholy energy. And I wish the very opposite energy for those of you either asleep, awake, everyone. Sweet dreams, or good day.